Inside, the talks go on. Outside, the beat goes on.
Well, you'd think after 2 weeks protesting they might be getting tired, fatigued, frustrated. Instead, these young people have as much energy as ever, and they're promising to keep going until they say the leaders start listening.
But this summit is almost out of time.
We're holding them accountable! Let them hear it! Show me what democracy looks like!
Cora is 15 and furious.
You seem absolutely desperate that the people beyond this fence actually hear you, even at this point, 2 weeks in.
Because we know they haven't done any real achievements yet, and this is basically our last day, our last few days, to make them listen and to make them change something while they still have a really good opportunity in front of them.
We are going back in our countries very angry.
There is, though, a chasm between the demands on the street and the words being knocked about inside.
Huge typhoons hit my country.
Mitzi is from the Philippines.
It is infuriating because they keep saying these small words and saying, oh, this is the stronger word. I don't see stronger words. I need action.
Does that mean that this movement, in a way, has failed as well?
I don't think so. That it's always the leaders' fault for not listening to the people, and we are just going to keep fighting.
Soon they were joined by those who walked out of the summit in protest. A red ribbon to symbolise, they say, red lines betrayed in the talks.
I'm from Tla'amin Nation. It's within so-called Canada. We walked out because nothing's happening in there. There's no productive outcome to the climate negotiations as we anticipated, because it's a negotiation between colonial nation states that are responsible for climate change.
Hanging by a thread.
The world is still heading towards catastrophic temperatures, whatever the final text agreed here. Overall at COP26, the mood is far from joyful.
Do you think your grandkids are going to be okay?
No. Most of the changes will be not only in its climate, but big parts of the world will be inhabitable.
And yet, two words, fossil fuel, may for the first time make it into the final text. Is that a win for the protesters?
Yes, it's good that they're in there, but it's not as strong as it should be, and it really needs to be strengthened.
No more!
After 2 weeks of talks and shouting about talks, most here will leave Glasgow as impatient as they arrived.
I can tell you what we want! Well, at the forefront of the climate emergency, of course, are those who live on low-lying islands across the world. And it was their representatives who gave some of the most moving speeches today on the conference floor. Joining me are Shauna Aminath, the Minister of Environment for the Maldives, and Seve Panyu, Tuvalu's Minister for Finance and Climate Change. And we saw earlier in the programme your emotional plea just in that room over there. I mean, do you feel that the rich world has just let you down here?
Exactly. We had very high hopes of coming to Glasgow. We had a very high level of anticipation and optimism that Glasgow will deliver action. We are at the front line of climate change impacts. Tuvalu land is fast disappearing. Tuvalu is literally sinking. And we are here to advocate for ambitious action. And action needs to be taken now. So over the last couple of weeks, we are a bit saddened and disappointed that that level of anticipation and optimism advocated for by the G20 world leaders when they spoke at the summit here in Glasgow had not been translated into concrete actions.
And what do you think went wrong?
Well, there is still some misgivings and disbelief on the impacts of climate change and the resultant effect.
What, you think they don't believe you?
It seems to be. But we are here to tell the world that we are being severely affected. We are suffering the impacts of climate change and the injustice of climate change on our people in our community.
I mean, you face the same existential threat. Do you share that sense of, well, it's betrayal, really, isn't it?
Absolutely. The thing is, climate change is an everyday battle for us. We live with these changes, the impacts of climate change. Our islands are eroding, our coral reefs are dying, we have run out of fresh water. Impact of climate change is not something that will happen in the future for us, it's happening now. And I am still hopeful, I want to be hopeful, because there's no other option for us. There's no planet B for us, there's no other country that we can run into, there's no higher ground for us.
I mean, when we talk about, existential threats and climate catastrophe, when you look into your future, do you think you have a future?
The IPCC report says we've got about 2 to 3 decades, and even in my plenary today, I said we've got 98 months for us to halve our emissions, to keep it with 1.5. And if we can't do it, we're talking about countries like Tuvalu, countries like the Maldives being inundated and becoming uninhabitable.
So what's your answer to those people who say, but what about all these new, airports in the Maldives and your reliance on international travel? Isn't that hypocrisy?
No country should have a free ticket on this one. No one should have a free pass, including the Maldives. And we're doing what we can at home. We have pledged to become net zero by 2030. We are phasing out single-use plastics by 2023. We have protected 13% of our coral reefs. But as a frontline state, we need urgent action from the global community to keep it to 1.5, because we did not cause the climate crisis.
So what will you do now? Because everyone's saying, it's all about next year. So how will you keep the pressure on for next year?
Yeah, so just keep on the advocacy to tell the world our message. We are here in Glasgow to negotiate a non-negotiable future because we have our land fast disappearing. We are literally sinking. So if we cannot achieve the 1.5 trajectory, that means it's a survival of a race, completely annihilated.
How long have you got if things carry on as they are now?
In a few decades' time. We are talking tens of years now.
How does that make you feel?
Yeah, very worried and frustrated because our message hasn't been heard or hasn't been accepted by the international community.
We've got 98 months to sort this, to halve our emissions. In 10 years, we need to do this. Otherwise, my question is, we're about 400,000 people. Are you willing to accept 400,000 people as climate refugees in your countries?
Ministers, thank you both very much indeed for joining us tonight.